has lost a very big icon. Stan Lee, the co-founder of Marvel Comics, has passed away. His legacy is one that is vast and encompassing literally an entire universe. A universe full of characters that he created in part or in whole. I'm Chris. Join me as I reveal to you 8 of the greatest characters Stan Lee ever created. Number 8 is Thor. The creation of Thor actually can't be given to Stan Lee in full. After all, he took inspiration from the Norse pantheon of gods. But for Stan Lee, the bringing of Thor into the Marvel Universe was actually based on the decision to make a character as strong, if not stronger, than the Incredible Hulk. He said, "How do you make someone stronger than the strongest person?" And then it finally came to me. Don't make him human, make him a god. I decided that readers were already pretty familiar with the Greek and Roman gods. It might be fun to delve into the old Norse legends. Besides, I pictured Norse gods looking like Vikings of old, with the flowing beard, horned helmets, and battle clubs. Journey into Mystery needed a shot in the arm, so I picked Thor. After writing an outline depicting the story and the characters I had in mind, I asked my brother Larry to write the script because I didn't have time, and it was only natural for me to assign the penciling to Jack Kirby. So Thor, son of Odin, was brought into the Marvel Universe. With him came all the characters and legends that Norse mythology had, which was greatly pleasing to artist Jack Kirby as he loved the legends of the Norse gods. But he wanted to modernize them, make them stronger and a little more personal than the old stories. And so with Lee, the two went to work. The Thor comic can be thanked for many things, including the creation of the Loki that most people know. The stories featuring the 9 realms and the showing off of characters like Sif and Beta Ray Bill, the Ice Giants, Hela, and there's lots more. Not to mention in the New Age, having Thor become a woman via a new host in Jane Foster, Thor's former love interest. The God of Thunder is still going strong today, and it's all because of Lee wanting to make a stronger hero. Number 7, the Incredible Hulk. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Stan Lee knew that not all heroes can be perfect. Not everyone can be pure like Steve Rogers or innocent like Peter Parker. He knew that some heroes had monsters inside them, and it was that motivation that created the Incredible Hulk. Stan Lee said, "Frankenstein. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the Frankenstein monster. No one could really ever convince me that he was the bad guy. He never wanted to hurt anyone. He merely groped his torturous way through a second life, trying to defend himself, trying to come to terms with those who sought to destroy him. I decided I might as well borrow from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as well. Our protagonist would constantly change from his normal identity to his superhuman alter ego and then back again. Now, what made the Hulk so different from everyone else was that Bruce Banner could transform into the Hulk with anger, which isn't typical or ordinary for any hero. Yet it worked for the most part. Ironically, the Hulk didn't have the best publication history starting off. But as time went on and he joined the Avengers, he soon became a key part of Marvel history. Number 6, Iron Man. Iron Man is the character associated the most with the Marvel Cinematic Universe as he started the whole thing back in 2008. But in the comics, he was created by Lee and others and debuted in 1963 in Tales of Suspense. For Lee, he wanted to create a guy that really challenged the norm of superhero comics, as well as broke down what was going on in the world at the time. He said it was the height of the Cold War. The readers, the young readers, if there was one thing they hated, it was war. It was the military. So I got a hero who represented that to the 100th degree. He was a weapons manufacturer. He was providing weapons for the army. He was rich. He was an industrialist. I thought it would be fun to take that kind of character that nobody would like, none of our readers would like, and shove him down their throats and make them like him. And he became very popular. Iron Man is a character that very much plays up the idea of redemption from one's past. But it also didn't shy away from giving Tony plenty of modern-day problems too, like alcoholism and being a womanizer. While he's never been Marvel's biggest comic character in terms of comic sales, many have made their mark on the franchise, and Iron Man has become a beloved character and still endures today. Number 5, the Avengers. Avengers Assemble. Believe it or not, Stan Lee's first team creation wasn't the Avengers. But you could argue that it's the most popular, especially given the movies that have been made about them. Earth's mightiest heroes were brought together in 1963 and were composed of Iron Man, Ant-Man, the Wasp, Hulk, and Thor. But over the years have featured a great deal of other characters, including villains like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. While Lee didn't create all these characters, though he did make many of them, he brought them all together and thus gave Marvel a true flagship team to hang their brand on. Numerous writers and artists have made their name on the Avengers titles, including Brian Michael Bendis, Jonathan Hickman, and so many more. The movie Avengers Infinity War was the biggest Marvel movie ever, grossing over $2 billion and being the fourth highest grossing movie of all time. Number 4. Black Panther. Wakanda Forever. After seeing the success of the Black Panther movie, you might think that his creation into the Marvel Universe was heralded by many, but that didn't stop Stan Lee from making him anyways. Black Panther was the first black mainstream superhero in history. DC, Marvel, or otherwise. He debuted in the Fantastic Four comic and later became a part of the Avengers, then slowly but surely got his own comic series after a plethora of guest roles and co-starring features. Now, what makes T'Challa so important to the history of the world is that from the outset he was a king, the king of the nation Wakanda. Wakanda was actually one of the most technologically advanced nations in the world, despite not being known to exist by many. So not only did Lee create a black superhero, he created a king, and one that actually was stronger than most of the heroes in the Marvel roster, which is no small feat. Despite the controversies around the character and the name, Black Panther continued. He's also been credited as being the first character to feature a graphic novel storyline via a 13-issue story in Jungle Action, which was a single story told over 13 issues. Now Black Panther is known to the world via his movie, cartoons, comics, and more. And in the comics right now, he's the leader of the Avengers. Number 3. Fantastic Four. When word got out about DC Comics' Justice League of America doing well in 1961, Marvel apparently asked Lee to do something similar, a team book, one that would challenge DC's books. But for Stan Lee, he didn't want to just do what DC Comics did, he wanted to do something different. He said, for just this once, I would do the type of story I myself would enjoy reading, and the characters would be the kind of characters I could personally relate to. They'd be fallible and feisty, and most important of all, inside their colorful costumed bodies, they'd still have feet of clay. Through this, he created the Fantastic Four, who were literally called the first family of comics. What some don't know is that before this, Stan Lee felt his comic career was becoming stagnant at this point. But he wanted to do Fantastic Four, so he made it as a swan song of sorts. Instead, it became one of the best-selling titles at Marvel. Part of this was because of the true family dynamic that the team had. So after they got their powers and became a team, they still acted like a family and not just a random group of people brought together. But what Lee and co-creator Jack Kirby did, though, was use their dynamic and the use of science to expand the Marvel Universe. Because of the Fantastic Four, we got to meet characters like the Inhumans and the planet-devouring Galacticus. The Fantastic Four series was one of the longest-running series in the history of Marvel. And when it did end in 2015, the world cried foul. Thankfully, it was relaunched in August of 2018, and the first family is back together once more. Number 2. X-Men. People fear what they don't understand. For many heroes in the Marvel pantheon, most are viewed as just that, heroes. And that's kind of the point. But for one group of heroes, acceptance is their greatest battle. And this is the story of the X-Men. For Stan Lee, who was co-creator of the X-Men alongside Jack Kirby, he wanted to do something different than most of the other heroes he had done, mainly because just about all of them had a defining accident, and that's what gave them powers. Lee knew that he couldn't just keep doing that without getting more and more ridiculous. In 2004, Lee recalled in an interview, "I couldn't have everybody bitten by a radioactive spider or exposed to a gamma ray explosion, and I took the cowardly way out. I said to myself, why don't I just say they're mutants, that they were born that way?" There was also a lot of subtext going on with their creation via the mutant problem that the comics showed. For this was a group of people who were born with powers that didn't emerge at the same time. And that created a lot of panic in the people of the world, which caused a lot of fear, which led to a lot of crimes against the mutant race. This was symbolic of the state of civil rights at the time the X-Men were born, in the 1960s, and is still something the world struggles with today in regards to racism. Something that people sometimes forget is that the original X-Men were 6 members. That's it. Cyclops, Jean Grey, Iceman, Beast, Angel, and their leader, Professor Xavier. After a while, though, sales were waning, so Marvel stopped making the comic. But in the 1970s, the comic was revamped. It brought out key characters like Colossus, Storm, and Wolverine, and sales soared. In the 80s, it became Marvel's best series, and the title Uncanny X-Men #1 became the best-selling comic of all time. The X-Men have had successful TV shows, 2 different timelines in movies, and they've made a big impact on the world. Number 1. Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. This one line, created by Stan Lee, perfectly sums up the character of Spider-Man, Lee's greatest and no doubt most popular superhero creation. And what makes Spider-Man so different, and by extension so popular from other heroes, is that he is very much an everyman character. He doesn't have a dark history, he wasn't a child of destiny, he wasn't even born with his powers, he doesn't hail from another world or plane of existence. He's simply Peter Parker. Average, yet brilliant. Peter Parker was just a regular kid until a radioactive spider bit him, gave him powers, and Spider-Man was born, sort of. Lee loved the idea of Peter Parker being so different from the other heroes, so he made him as geeky and nerdy as possible. And as well, he's a teenager. He also wanted to show the struggle that heroes have in their everyday lives in a way that few other heroes had. That's why he connects with so many readers, because they can see themselves in him, even at his lowest points. Spider-Man today is one of the biggest franchises in all of the world. He has TV shows, movies, numerous comics, and even a long line of video games. But when Lee pitched him to his boss at Marvel, he was almost thrown out the window, or so he claimed. The idea of a Spider-Man was too gross for the mind of his publisher, and he felt that people wouldn't respond to him. But Lee kept pushing, and in Amazing Fantasy number 15 in August of 1962, Spider-Man was born. And the rest is history. You know, a lot of characters come to mind when you think about Stan Lee, but when you think about the impact that they've had, few, if any, top Spider-Man. Thanks for taking the time with us to go through this list of the top characters that Stan Lee created or co-created. His time at Marvel was amazing, and he'll be missed. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button before you leave, because we create more videos all the time.